Hello, I am Professor Mark Holzer, founding director of the National Center for Public Performance at Suffolk University, editor-in-chief of the Public Performance and Management Review, and former president of the American Society for Public Administration. The purpose of my lecture is to help you build a custom performance measurement and improvement plan for whatever agency you work for, or a nonprofit organization, or other government entity that is serving the public. The plan that I am going to discuss with you has four parts. One is planning strategically. A second is building capacities for measuring and improving services. A third is learning for performance improvement, and a fourth is engaging partners to maintain and build momentum. In terms of planning strategically, it is critical to secure top leadership involvement and commitment. Many programs have failed because they did not have that type of commitment. They could not endure. It is also important to consult with key stakeholders. Need to consult with all of the groups and individuals who would be involved. Understand prior and related efforts so as not to ignore the history of what has been attempted before, and to learn from their successes and errors. It is especially important to ensure sufficient budgetary resources are devoted to the program. Programs cannot really succeed if they are what we call a bootstrap effort, or voluntary effort, or something that is low down, on the agenda, but just added for symbolic purposes. Resources are not just financial, they are personnel as well. You need a staff, a well-trained staff. You need a staff that understands what needs to be done and can quickly, get to that task and move the program forward. It's important to invest in learning resources so that you continuously learn about what innovations there are, what best practices are available to you. It's also important strategically to develop a plan for performance measurement improvement for the short term and for the long term. These efforts don't generally survive on their own without some dedicated plan. Part of the plan should be to develop performance goals and subsidiary goals, so that you know what it is you are trying to achieve and you have a roadmap to achieving that. You need to set performance improvement priorities, starting with potential high impacts. It's very important to, in terms of your elected officials, in terms of your political support, to have some early wins that have a high impact in terms of delivering services as promised to your citizens. And it's important to coordinate with the organization's overall strategic plan. There is always some sort of plan. Even if it is not completely written down, there is some sort of strategic vision that leaders of the organization, leaders of the government have. And it's important to coordinate with strategic communication processes. Performance improvement achievements don't speak for themselves. They need to be communicated to various constituencies, political actors, the media, the bureaucrats, citizens, businesses, etc. It's important to have access to organizational data. Data drives the plan. You cannot, be working on a plan on one side but not have access to the data that might inform the plan on the other, and the data will tell you how well you are doing. Then you must develop individual and team performance incentives. The people working on this effort need to be rewarded in some way. It might be financial, it might be psychological, it might be part of their performance evaluations. Okay, the second major thread in terms of performance improvement is to build capacities by forming internal working groups. And those internal working groups should include stakeholders defined broadly: employees, citizens, users, management experts, anybody who can help you understand what the problem is you're trying to solve and what's a feasible solution to that. Then you would form or link to external working groups to broaden your perspective. Similar communities, professional associations, perhaps even international groups. Key staff members need to be trained in performance analysis competencies. It's not simply handing a task to somebody. It's necessary to find competencies, and it's possible to acquire such training over the web. Stakeholders have to be oriented to the performance program. It can't just be announced. They need to be brought along, in a sense. As part of the program, you should access a list of key performance indicators. Again, those are available on the web, or you may be able to just develop your own key performance indicators by consulting with the various working groups, internal and external. What's important to them in terms of what needs to be measured. You would then select your key performance indicators, quantitative or qualitative or both, so that you understand what capacities you're trying to build, and you can measure those as you go along. You will then, in addition to selecting KPIs, key performance indicators for those capacities, you'll select them for outputs or the services that you're providing, and then for outcomes or impacts of those services. In other words, what were the services intended to achieve in the first place? You need to access routinely collected data. There's much data that's generated all the time, and you don't need to reinvent the data collection. A lot of it is there. You need to use the data. Okay, identify data that has not been routinely collected in addition to those that have been, so that you will be fully informed. One way to get important data is to conduct surveys or interviews of users, non-users, employees, managers, etc. You have to display the data so that you can see what's happening and that your stakeholders can see what's happening. That means building a dashboard and developing graphics. It's much more important to move to graphics than to just have a spreadsheet. Most people can read graphics. Not everyone can read a spreadsheet. Then you need to publish report cards. And the report cards shouldn't just deal with data. They should deal with cases or vignettes as to what you have achieved. Okay, the third thread is learning for performance improvement. So you need to continually scan the relevant literature. This is academic literature and applied literature. Some of it might come from the business sector. You need to convene performance measurement and improvement meetings. Performance is not something that you just sit in a corner and do. You need to have a meeting so that everybody can can provide analysis, can provide suggestions, ask questions, bring additional insights to your process. You need to emphasize learning and from successes, but also learning from errors. So you're in a continuous learning environment and performance improvement. It's important to scan tracked data and trends to identify areas for improvement. So you're not just looking at the data, you're plotting trend analyses. You want to see which way the line or the curve is going. Is it going in the direction you expected, or is it going in the other direction? Someone on your staff needs to search networks and the web for the best practices and model programs. This is a step that's often ignored, but there are many, many models out there, and they are free for the taking, in a sense. You can download their information. You may even be able to ask questions of them. So I very much advocate contacting the best practices and model programs to discuss the fine points or the subtleties of these programs. And my experience is that they would be flattered to be asked, and they will provide you with free consultation, in a sense. You need to disseminate best practices models to all stakeholders and members of the working groups so they can evaluate what it is that can be utilized, and then adapt the best practices you found to the local context. Usually there is no problem with copyright or intellectual property if you're dealing with models from the public sectors and government agencies. And then it's important to implement decisions to improve services and outcomes. You don't want to just discuss all of this. You want to get to the point where there is some action. One thing that's often overlooked is coordinating with personnel performance evaluations. The data for programs it shows progress or lack of progress, perhaps from a team perspective in terms of what a group is doing, but you need to somehow link it to individual performance evaluations within the context of what somebody has the power or discretion to do. And then to develop individual incentives and shared rewards, which can apply to a group, to a team, as well. Develop the team incentives, shared rewards, and I think then that will round out the personnel side of the program. And then it's important to engage partners to maintain and build momentum as another thread there. This is an important part of the formula for success. So you want as large a set of wins as you can, but these could be a track record of small wins. You want to celebrate those wins, the progress, the achievements you're making internally, so that you are recognizing what people have done within the organization. And very often, you don't need to give them money as a reward, but you simply give them recognition. Then publicize the wins externally. This can be done through a newsletter, through the media. It could be done in any number of ways. Try to anticipate crises and misunderstandings and respond with facts, not just verbiage, but with facts. Build the capacity to meet increased demands for services as you go along, so that you can scale up what you're doing. Continually scan the environment so that you're not taken by surprise and you understand what additional resources are being made available, or where the environment is changing and priorities might be changing. Communicate regularly with your community-based partners. In the U.S., this includes nonprofits and public interest groups, and the public in general. That's where the media comes in. We find that building public-private collaborations is very important, or public-private partnership (PPPs) is the initials for those. Highlight your track record of performance improvements in the budget process, so that you can get more resources to reinvest in performance improvement. Constantly supply elected officials with evidence of successes. That's the currency that they need. Argue that the performance program is an important investment, that it's an important return on the investment, ROI, if you will, in business terms. maybe the organization's best investment, and reevaluate efforts on a regular basis. Then as you go along, you must make changes, to those efforts for continuous improvement. That's a summary. We will make resources available in terms of associated files, so you'll see this summarized as a simulation called Building a Custom Performance Measurement and Improvement Plan, and you'll see it summarized or related to other documents that we may be able to help you with. If there are any questions, please direct them to our National Center for Public Performance. And on behalf of the Center for Media and Peace Initiatives, I am very happy to present this short lecture to you, and I wish you success with your performance efforts.